let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
These people who say that we ought to withdraw from Vietnam are wholly wrong, because if we withdrew from Vietnam, the communists would control Vietnam. Pretty soon, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Malaya would go, and all of Southeast Asia would be under the control of the communists and under the domination of the Chinese.
If this little nation goes down the drain and can't maintain her independence, ask yourself what's going to happen to all the other little nations.
Back at 2-6, receiving fire, 9 o'clock, yellow smoke, 200 meters, automatic weapons, over.
Lyndon Johnson inherited the U.S. commitment to a non-communist regime in South Vietnam and 16,000 military advisors. Some were acting as more than advisors in the battle against the communist-led insurgency, the Viet Cong.
This is 2-6, we're present attacking the Victor Charlie sampans on the heading up from south to north, left breaks. Alpha fire team will lead the attack, followed by the rocket ship and 2-3, over. This is 2-6, we have some people running along the dikes. Actually, the canal is perpendicular to the one you're attacking now. They have on black uniforms. I estimate approximately 3-0. Do you have inside, over?
This is 2-3, roger. We have inside work age at the present time.
Roger.
Good job. I saw you splatter one right in the back with a rocket.
Roger, got lucky again.
Roger. This is Tiger 6.
Johnson's top concern at the time wasn't the escalating war in Asia, but a different conflict at home.
And this administration today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America.
Few U.S. presidents have matched Johnson's success in pushing legislation through Congress. He would later call his agenda the Great Society.
We are going to build a great society where no man or woman or the victim of fear or poverty or hatred, where every man and woman has a chance for fulfillment and prosperity and hope.
As Johnson entered office, villagers, often aided by the Viet Cong, destroyed the strategic hamlets meant to keep them from the Viet Cong. President Diem had established them, but Diem was now dead, and the U.S.-supported system he built was collapsing. General Min, with U.S. approval, removed Diem. He ruled 3 months. General Khan, also with U.S. backing, seized power in a bloodless coup.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present the Secretary of Defense of the United States of America, Mr. McNamara.
Johnson pledged U.S. backing to the new, untested ruler.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. General Taylor and I have known General Khan for a considerable period of time. He has our admiration, our respect, and our complete support.
How do you do?
You know, the Vice Premier...
McNamara toured South Vietnam with Khan, trying to boost his image. Privately, McNamara felt pessimistic. He cautioned Johnson that the Viet Cong had control over 40% of rural areas.
We are here to emphasize that the United States will maintain its interest and its presence in your country. There is no question whatsoever of our abandoning that interest. We'll say for as long as it takes, we shall provide whatever help is required to win the battle against the communist insurgents.
To the communists in Hanoi, America's involvement in the South was seen as more foreign aggression. They remembered 1,000 years of resisting invaders, Chinese, Japanese, French. Now they confronted Americans.
I should emphasize that the United States supported the French throughout the War of Resistance, throughout the French colonial war in Vietnam. The United States opposed the Geneva Conference, and it refused to sign the Geneva Agreements. The United States replaced the French in the South in order to continue the war through Ngo Dinh Diem and its other puppets. And then, the United States intervened directly in the war.
Ho Chi Minh increased aid to the Viet Cong, just as Johnson reaffirmed U.S. commitment to fight them. Both sides reacted to Southern instability with stronger determination.
During
the final months of 1963, Diem was shot and Kennedy was assassinated. So the situation in the South changed. Just at that time, President Ho Chi Minh called on all Vietnamese to double their efforts to help the people in the South. The resistance forces in the South were still very weak and badly equipped. In certain areas, they had trouble recruiting troops. Therefore, we decided that well-equipped and larger forces had to be sent to the South. Chinese advisors wanted us to wage only a small-scale guerrilla war. They told us to maintain the Ho Chi Minh Trail as it had always been. They wanted us to transport supplies to the South on our backs and shoulders, as if we were ants filling up anthills. But our decision, the decision of our party, our leaders, and our Supreme High Command, was to widen the trail into a modern communication system, capable of moving regular army units.
Hanoi chose to intensify the conflict, and the Viet Cong increased rural assaults.
When Lyndon Johnson inherited the presidency, he inherited many things, but one of them was the legacy of the Vietnam War. And the Democratic presidents felt need not to lose 1 square foot of territory to communism, particularly in Asia, to draw the line, to hold the line, and to keep the presidency thereby, because if you lose, the final domino in the domino sequence is not some Asian country, it's the presidency itself.
In 1964, conservative Republicans pressured Johnson to resist communism. In July, they chose Senator Barry Goldwater as their presidential candidate. He was a strong anti-communist voice.
I remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no life.
Johnson wanted a decisive win and hoped to avoid Vietnam becoming a campaign issue. By May, he had aides begin preparing a congressional resolution to back the war.
One of the mistakes he thought Harry Truman made was to be involved in Korea without congressional approval. Therefore, he determined at some propitious moment that he would bring the Congress in and have them approve whatever the objectives were to be determined to be in Vietnam.
It was discovered, however, in researching the Senate that the introduction of such a resolution would cause a very major filibuster by 2 or 3 strong opponents of the war at the time, and therefore do more harm than good, create not consensus but conflict. Therefore, by June 15th, 64, the idea of a resolution had been shelved.
In late July, the destroyer USS Maddox, on a surveillance mission, entered the Gulf of Tonkin near North Vietnam. It was soon joined by the USS Turner Joy. These two ships became part of an event that brought the Resolution to action. The Navy described it as an unprovoked attack, but key facts were omitted.
In international waters in the Gulf of Tonkin, destroyers of the United States Navy are assigned routine patrols from time to time. Sunday, August the 2nd, 1964, the destroyer Maddox was on such a patrol. Shortly after noon, the calm of the day is broken as general quarters sound. In a deliberate and unprovoked action, 3 North Vietnam PT boats unleash a torpedo attack against the Maddox. At once, the enemy patrol boats are brought under fire by the destroyer.
Before dawn on July 31st, South Vietnamese patrol boats, unmarked, struck 2 North Vietnamese island targets in a secret CIA-backed mission. The next evening, the Maddox cruised along the coast, getting as close as 5 miles. It changed direction. Early on August 2nd, it was 10 miles from one of the islands hit the night before. North Vietnamese patrol boats attacked the Maddox 6 hours later. Hanoi believed the Maddox was involved with the earlier raids. There was a connection.
Knowing in advance that from the South Vietnamese that the commando attacks were going to take place, it was very useful for the United States, for its own purpose in knowing the terrain in that area, to pick up the electronic signals and any messages that were relayed back and forth, indicating where North Vietnamese forces were, what they were doing, and what their reactions to the attacks were. Now, from the point of view of North Vietnam, I feel confident they considered U.S. and South Vietnamese forces in complete collusion to embarrass and damage North Vietnamese military facilities threatening the South.
At that time, Secretary McNamara emphasized the Maddox was only on a standard patrol.
No, it has no special relationship to any operations in that area. We're carrying routine patrols of this kind on all over the world all the time.
Following the Sunday attack, the Maddox is joined by the USS Turner Joy. As directed by the President of the United States, the Maddox and Turner Joy resume patrol operations in the Gulf of Tonkin. On the night of August the 4th, North Vietnamese patrol boats strike again, as filmed in this recreation.
The determination of all Americans to carry out our full commitment to the people and to the government of South Vietnam will be redoubled by this outrage. Yet our response for the present will be limited and fitting. We Americans know, although others appear to forget, the risk of spreading conflict. We still seek no wider war.
For the first time, U.S. aircraft carried out bombing runs against North Vietnam. This retaliation followed a second event, one Hanoi has consistently denied.
Đêm mùng 4, Đế quốc Mỹ. On the night of August 4th, the United States made public the so-called Gulf of Tonkin Incident. But the story was a fabrication created by the U.S. National Security Council. Even as the National Security Council met, American aircraft were being sent to destroy several areas of our country. In reality, the second Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened.
At that time, I felt it was questionable whether the second incident took place. I simply was not sure. It was not until after a number of days of collation of reports in the field had taken place that many of the reports which seemed to relate to the second incident were proved either to be unsound or to relate to the first incident. This is what intelligence analysis is all about. And in a military situation, quite often, the commanding officers, in this case the President of the United States, don't wait for the details to be settled. If they feel they're in a critical situation with a danger of military conflict, they make decisions without waiting for the intelligence detail.
He felt that it represented, if not an escalation of the war on their part, at least a punch in the nose in a way that would humiliate a great power if it didn't respond. All of this went through his mind, and he also saw it as one dramatic way in which, after weeks and months of seeming indecision, he could convey to Hanoi, to Saigon, and to the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue that you were not dealing with a softie.
Well, I think that President Johnson has done the correct thing. I really do.
I don't think that he could have done otherwise.
You feel,
especially when they attacked the American flag, yeah.
I'm behind him on it. I'm not for Johnson. I'm for Goldwater, but I'm behind him on this.
The minute incident number 1 happened, the attack on our ships, the resolution was brought right back off the shelf, put right to Congress, and of course, after incident number 2, sailed through with virtually no dissent, a blank check.
Senator William Fulbright, convinced the second incident had happened, rushed the resolution through Congress within 2 days.
Well, I think it's a very clear demonstration of the unity of the country behind the policies that are being followed by the President in South Vietnam, and more specifically of the action that was taken in response to the attack upon our destroyers. It shows a practically unanimous approval. It was unanimous in the House, and only 2 dissented in the Senate.
Being in the minority never proves that you're wrong. In fact, history is going to record that Senator Greening and I voted in the interest of the American people this morning when we voted against this resolution. And I'd have the American people remember what this resolution really is. It's a resolution which seeks to give the President of the United States the power to make war without a declaration of war.
Lyndon Johnson enacted the Tonkin Gulf Resolution into law. Congress granted him full power to use military force in Southeast Asia. With bipartisan backing, Johnson had taken Vietnam out of the election debate.
In the White House for the last 20 years, 5 presidents from both parties have adopted a bipartisan foreign policy. That bipartisan foreign policy has kept us out of war and has kept us at peace and has left your boy at home. And that's the way it ought to be. And that's the way it's going to be after November the 3rd.
Johnson didn't seek a wider war. He didn't want a wider war. He knew the war would engulf everything that he wanted to do in this country. At the same time, he also knew that if he didn't fulfill what he thought was an honorable commitment from the United States to South Vietnam, his administration could be lost as well. Barry Goldwater began after the nomination to try to be Mr. Moderate, Mr. Respectable. He tried to stand more in the center of the Republican Party than on the far right. And the president said to me one day, we've got to remind people of what Barry Goldwater was BC, before the convention.
5, 7, 6, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
These are the stakes to make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
He depicted Goldwater as reckless and positioned himself as cautious and responsible. The result was a landslide win. Just before Election Day, the Viet Cong hit a U.S. airbase near Saigon. They destroyed aircraft used against their operations. More American planes had arrived after the Tonkin events. Escalation kept leading to more escalation.
I recommended a retaliatory airstrike for the bombing of Bien Hoa Air Base, which was occupied largely by American aircraft, and the losses in personnel were all American. This was the first time the enemy had ever attacked a major military installation of the Americans. It was a change of tactics. It shouldn't be shrugged off, I thought, as just another thing instead of the war. It was something new, and it was an excellent reason to have a retaliatory strike.
American carriers stood ready, but Johnson declined his ambassador's proposal to bomb the North. The Viet Cong struck once again.
At the end of November, I was given the order to attack the Brinks Hotel, which housed high American officers. All the crimes committed by the Americans were directed from this nerve center. I sat in a nearby cafe to wait for the explosion, which occurred at exactly 5:45 on the afternoon of December 24th, the anniversary of the founding of the People's Army of Vietnam. Our commanders had ordered us to attack the place when the most Americans were there. And it was precisely as we had expected, since they were at the Brinks Hotel to plan their Christmas activities. Many Americans had also gone there from the Rex Hotel. As a result, the attack succeeded, and we were never detected.
Their Christmas Eve assault marked the second major attack on U.S. forces in 2 months. Ambassador Taylor again urged bombing raids on the North. Johnson again said no.
Again, recommended retaliation, got turned down. I felt reasonably sure, who wants to bomb Santa Claus?
Four days after the Viet Cong team blew up the Brinks Hotel, 2 Viet Cong regiments prepared to strike the village of Bin Za near Saigon. They inflicted the first of a series of devastating defeats on Saigon's army.
This was the use of battalion-sized units, reinforced battalion-sized units by the enemy, and the successful use that I feared would spread and was perhaps the beginning of a gradual movement toward a major effort, using not guerrillas, not small units, but large units.
It was not until we were presented with a larger war that the decision then had to be made as to whether we would let them get what they were after or whether we would make a greater effort ourselves.
By early February 1965, National Security Advisor McGeorge Bundy had already come to support a stronger U.S. response. He had recently urged the president to bomb North Vietnam.
The president has asked me to extend the New Year's greetings to all the people of Vietnam and to express his conviction that the year of the snake can be one in which security and prosperity grow in Vietnam.
While McGeorge Bundy was in Saigon, the Viet Cong attacked an American outpost at Pleiku in the Central Highlands.
we found our friends in Washington on the wire, and they wanted our recommendation. Took us a little while to concert a view, which was that this episode did call for a reply.
In the first raid, land-based planes were forced back by the weather, but the carrier jets completed their strike with the loss of one American plane. Later, photo reconnaissance flights proved that much of the staging area had been completely destroyed. The confrontation between the Reds and the West was the most critical since the Gulf of Tonkin Incident last summer, when the U.S. replied just as swiftly to North Vietnam PT boat attacks.
President Johnson explained what had happened, explained what he had believed was essential, the decision to conduct a reprisal and to have a clear-cut policy of further bombings as required in circumstances that seemed very likely to arise. In effect, a real change in the way we were acting.
A few days later, Johnson gave the green light to sustained bombing in North Vietnam. He hoped to bolster Saigon's morale, but there was a coup attempt in Saigon on February 19th. The bombing was to begin the next day, coordinated with the Saigon government. Ambassador Taylor canceled it. The government was in turmoil. In fact, it had been in turmoil for months. When Khan took advantage of the Tonkin incidents the previous August to tighten his grip, students had rioted. Buddhists also protested, but demonstrating Buddhists threatened the Catholics. They staged a sit-down strike. After 10 days, Khan formed a triumvirate to try to rule South Vietnam. 4 days later, Khan resigned. He said he was ill.
Who is the man who can lead Vietnam to victory?
Well, I think you got me there.
Acting Prime Minister Nguyen Huan, a Harvard-educated economist, lasted 3 days. Then Khan returned.
Although I have not yet quite recovered from my illness, I do my best to return today to assume the responsibility of leading the government in these critical times.
A week later, in mid-September, there was a coup attempt.
The thing that worried Johnson and constantly worried him was the instability of the South Vietnamese government. I guess you might call the coat of arms of the Vietnamese government was a turnstile, for God's sake. And I remember very vividly somebody would come in his office and say looks like there's a coup beginning in Vietnam again. Another coup. You know, coups were like fleas on a dog, and Johnson said, I don't want to hear any more about this coup shit. I've had enough of it, and we've got to find a way to stabilize those people out there.
That proved difficult. Khan turned the government over to civilians in the fall, but continued to intrigue as head of the armed forces. The political turmoil intensified. In February, with Ambassador Taylor's approval, Khan's own military colleagues rebelled against him and banished him to the United Nations. Though a stable government remained elusive, the campaign of bombing North Vietnam began. It was called Rolling Thunder.
We thought that at a certain point, and in conjunction with a situation within the South that was turned around, it would be a decisive thing in getting Hanoi to say, all right, we can't get there now, we will fall back, not abandon the objective of taking over the South, but drop it for now. We never had the view that bombing would bring about quick results. Certainly not on the essentially measured scale that was actually carried out We thought it would cut down the amount of the infiltration, that by hitting the supply lines you'd make it much more difficult.
I had been a director of the United States Strategic Bombing Survey toward the end of the Second World War, and we'd made a detailed study of the effects of strategic bombing on not only the German war economy, but on the psychology of the German people. I was convinced that we were not going to achieve our will by bombing the North, that in the first place it was a fairly primitive industrial society, and that there weren't the kind of targets that were adapted for strategic bombing. And secondly, I was convinced that we would never break the will of a determined people simply by bombing, and in fact we would probably tend to unite them more than ever.
The Tan Hoa Bridge, located 80 miles south of Hanoi, became a key target in spring 1965. It was struck and repaired repeatedly over the years.
When the bombing program started, I realized that the airfields, and we had 3 jet-capable airfields, were extremely vulnerable. If that strategy was to be a viable one, we had to protect those airfields. I feared that the Vietnamese did not have the capability of protecting the American aircraft on those airfields, and therefore my first requests for troops were associated with protecting the airfields.
The President approved Westmoreland's request with minimal discussion. On March 8, 1965, 3,500 U.S. Marines arrived to secure the Da Nang Air Base. Sending these Marines wasn't part of any major buildup plan, yet 200,000 troops would be sent before year's end.
My opinion was, let's not bring any ground forces in until we have to. Once you get into this business, how do you turn back? Now, there was no one was blind about the danger of that first soldier Marine coming ashore. I certainly wasn't. Once the decision was made, the Marines started coming ashore. As far as I was concerned, that's that. Let's go, boys, as fast as we can receive these troops logistically and have a real mission for them.
3 weeks after the Marines arrived, the Viet Cong launched an attack on the U.S. Embassy in Saigon.
More Americans? No, principally logistical support, arms, munitions, training assistance. As many as 5,000, sir? We've heard this report. No, I'm not discussing primarily additional personnel.
In early April, Johnson sought to keep troop movements under wraps. In truth, 2 more Marine battalions had landed quietly, while Secretary McNamara spoke. More arrived weekly, mostly unnoticed. By spring, 72,000 troops had been deployed.
One of the reasons for this gradualness in our buildup of resistance in South Vietnam was due to the fact that we did not want to present Moscow and Hanoi with a major new situation during any given week, which would require them to go through an orgasm of decision-making based upon worldwide strategic considerations. And so each week was not all that different than the week before.
In early April, Johnson also redefined their mission. Passive defense of airfields ended after only weeks.
When the Marines were first landed at Da Nang, we were told that the objective was to defend the air base. How do you resolve that, sir, with your statements in Saigon that their objective is to kill the Viet Cong, to seek them out and kill them?
Well, I did say that. I think that goes along with our objective, our mission, our assignment to defend that big complex at Da Nang and Phu Bai. You can't defend a place like that by sitting on your ditty box. You got to get out and aggressively
patrol. And that's what our people are doing. And the one thing I emphasized to them while I was out there was to find these Viet Cong and kill them.
For the first time, a U.S. president allowed ground forces to take the offensive in Vietnam. Their patrols stayed within 50 miles of coastal outposts. Johnson advanced carefully. Still, the troop increase and offensive orders aimed to signal Ho Chi Minh his resolve. 5 days later, Johnson made an offer to Ho.
The vast Mekong River can provide food and water and power on a scale to dwarf even our own TVA.
He proposed a massive Southeast Asia development program if Ho would end his aims.
And we remain ready with this purpose for unconditional discussions.
Coming back in the helicopter from that speech in 1965 at Johns Hopkins University, where he had promised a TVA for the Mekong Valley if only Ho Chi Minh would be reasonable, he leaned across to an assistant, put his hand on his knee and said, "Old Ho can't turn that down. Old Ho can't turn that down." See, if Ho Chi Minh had been George Meany, Lyndon Johnson would have had a deal.
Mr. Secretary, what is your reaction to the announcement from the communist side rejecting our offer of negotiation?
Well, we regret that. As President Johnson said Saturday, there have been many disappointments of the past week. That is one. We stand ready and willing to talk anytime, any place.
Has our bombing attack really hurt the North Vietnamese?
I don't think there's any question but what it has. In particular, during the past 2 weeks, we've concentrated on bridges and the routes of communication, have destroyed many of these, and this can't help but delay the movement of men and material to the communists in the South.
This footage came from East German filmmakers, but its message reflected reality. Bombing North Vietnam wasn't halting the supply flow. Weapons and materials from the North kept reaching deep into the South.
In the spring of 1965, every report, the CIA, the military, the embassy, independent observers who had been there, was saying Vietnam is on the verge of collapse. And the president says, "I feel like a hitchhiker caught in a hailstorm on a Texas highway. I can't run, I can't hide, and I can't make it stop."
By spring 1965, the war had shifted. Large Viet Cong formations had taken over from small guerrilla bands. In June, they overran Dong Sui outpost and destroyed much of the village. Saigon's forces lost 800 elite soldiers in the battle. South Vietnam's army was nearing total collapse. At the same time, its civilian leadership crumbled, and the military assumed control.
I asked all of them, 60 or 70 of them, in the room. I said, okay, one more time. Anyone want to be prime minister? And he said, no. So Thieu said, I propose Key. And all of them just stood up and, accept the offer. But then I didn't give them the answer. I said I have to go back and talk with my wife first. And when I told her about that offer, she was not excited. She said, "Oh no, not that job, not as a prime minister." I'm not a good politician. I'm not a good diplomat. I think all I know. The only thing I can do well is, flying the airplane. I said, well, what can I do now?
I feel it's important at this juncture that we prepare for the long pull.
The situation was critical. In July, Westmoreland met with Secretary McNamara and General Wheeler, head of the Joint Chiefs. He requested 125,000 troops right away and 200,000 by year's end. Johnson approved the increase, while McNamara was still in Saigon. The president then convened several high-level meetings, staged as open debate, to gain backing for a choice he had already made.
I remember him turning to Wheeler and he said to him, "You're asking for 200,000 more men now. What happens if in 2, 3, 4 years you ask me for 500,000 men?" A very prophetic statement. "What do you expect me to do? How can I respond to it? What makes you think Ho Chi Minh won't match us for every man we send in?" And another time to the group he said, "We've got 2 questions that we've got to answer. Can Westerners fight a war in Asian jungles? And number 2, how on earth can we fight a war under the direction of others whose governments topple like bowling pins?" He said, "Now, somebody answer those questions for me."
In explaining to the president the concern that I felt about a mounting escalation, I said to him, once on the tiger's back, we can't pick the time to dismount. You're going to lose control of this situation, and this could be very serious.
Secretary McNamara framed the 3 options. Option number 1 was to cut our losses and get out. Option number 2 was a middle course. Option number 3 was to give the military in Vietnam what it wanted. Listen to the way the first option was phrased. Cut our losses and withdraw under the best conditions that can be arranged. Almost certainly, conditions humiliating the United States and very damaging to our future effectiveness on the world scene. Now, you're president, and you have this memorandum from the Secretary of Defense, and it says, you can cut our losses and withdraw under the best conditions. However, it's going to make a fool of you in the world. I mean, that was an option, the very framing of which presumed its rejection.
Our reputation as a nation consisted of many things, not the least of which was that we had some sense of perspective and therefore had some judgment, while many of our allied countries were beginning to think that we were out of our minds to pursue such a futile war.
Peace has been maintained because people in certain other capitals would say to themselves, "Now look, comrades, we'd better be a little careful here because those damned fool Americans just might do something about it." If that question in their minds got to be a sense of certainty that we would not do something about it, then I think we'd be exposed to very great dangers.
I found him the most sympathetic of all of the people in the entourage. He was the one who seemed to take my cautionary views most seriously. He was the one who seemed to be probing more and more deeply for a way out, but he could never reconcile extrication with his personal commitment that he would not be the first president to lose a war.
We do not want an expanding struggle with consequences that no one can foresee, nor will we bluster or bully or flaunt our power. But we will not surrender, and we will not retreat. We intend to convince the communists that we cannot be defeated by force of arms or by superior power. I have asked the commanding general, General Westmoreland, what more he needs to meet this mounting aggression. He has told me, and we will meet his needs.
There was no big speech to Congress. Johnson still held authority under the Tonkin Gulf Resolution. Nor was there any televised announcement in prime time. He shared his decision at a midday press conference.
I think it's hard to avoid the conclusion that the president wanted as low-keyed an announcement as he could get and as little energetic public debate as possible.
We did make a deliberate decision not to create war fever in this country. You didn't see members of the armed forces or units of the armed forces parading through American cities. You didn't see pretty movie stars out selling bonds and factories and things like that, all the things we did during World War II. Because we felt that in this nuclear world where thousands of megatons are lying around in the hands of frail human beings, it's just too dangerous for an entire people to become too angry.
We're going to do everything we can with our left hand to negotiate an agreement that will allow people to breathe free independently, independent of any ideology of ours or of anyone else's. Give them the right of choice. And if we do that, we'll come home tomorrow.
As Johnson addressed reporters from the White House lawn, a Marine rifle unit departed Da Nang for nearby hamlets. Viet Cong fighters from this region had recently shelled Da Nang and earlier wounded 7 Marines during a patrol.
If I resist them, if I deter them, if we keep our commitment that 3 presidents have made, President Eisenhower, President Kennedy, and the present president, then the people say, well, you should come on home. What happens there doesn't matter. If you stay there, there's some say, well, you ought to get it over with in a hurry. So some want to go and blow up everything. Some want to come and blow up nothing and leave and get out and forget them. We're trying to do the reasonable thing to say that power and brute force and aggression is not going to prevail. You can't do this thing by force. Now let's sit down and reason it out, and let's try to allow these people a choice. Now that's what I'm trying so hard to do, and that's what I need your help on. Why don't people concern themselves something with a country that's trying to maintain her independence from aggression, that's being invaded?
Johnson called it an invasion. Hanoi called it a liberation. By autumn 1965, 3 North Vietnamese regiments gathered in the Central Highlands. Nearly 2 years had passed since Johnson had renewed America's view to defend the South. Nearly 2 years since Ho Chi Minh recommitted to freeing it. Now, both forces prepared for direct conflict. Westmoreland feared North Vietnam aimed to split the South in 2. To stop them, he deployed his Sky Troopers, the 1st Air Cavalry Division.
Now, America wins the wars that she undertakes, make no mistake about it. And we have declared war on ignorance and illiteracy. We have declared war on poverty. We have declared war on disease. And we have declared war on tyranny and aggression. And we not only stand for these things, but we're willing to stand up and die for these things.
Westmoreland ordered them to hunt down Hanoi's forces, waiting in a river valley beneath the Shupong Mountains. In the Battle of the La Drang Valley, Americans engaged North Vietnamese troops directly for the first time. For the first time, B-52 bombers supported soldiers in close combat. And for Americans, for the first time, Vietnam had become a full-scale war.
How many men who listen to me tonight have served their nation in other wars? How very many are not here to listen? The war in Vietnam is not like these other wars. Yet, finally, war is always the same. It is young men dying in the fullness of their promise. It is trying to kill a man that you do not even know well enough to hate. Therefore, to know war is to know that there is still madness in this world. For we have children to teach, and we have sick to be cured, and we have men to be freed. There are poor to be lifted up, and there are cities to be built, and there's a world to be helped. Yet, we do what we must. I am hopeful, and I will try with best I can with everything I've got to end this battle and to return our sons to their desires. Yet, as long as others will challenge America's security and test the dearness of our beliefs with fire and steel, then we must stand or see the promise of 2 centuries tremble.
From August of 1964, when the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution gave President Lyndon B. Johnson license to prosecute the Vietnam War using American blood and treasure, until April of 1975, some 2.7 million Americans served in Southeast Asia.
But a deliberately planned fighter sweep went just as we'd hoped. The MiGs came up, the MiGs were aggressive, we tangled, they lost.
$58,000 of them never returned. Those that did return found themselves in a country very different from the one that sent them off to war. Vietnam veterans came home to a nation that did not wholly comprehend where they had been or why, let alone what they had seen and experienced. But there, in country, as they say, Vietnam veterans found something else, a brotherhood. It was one thing on which they knew they could bet their lives, the sacred bond Vietnam veterans had with one another. That bond never has been and never will be broken. So when the veterans returned home to a nation that was at best indifferent and at worst contemptuous, they continued to rely on each other. Vietnam veterans adopted a unique custom. Upon meeting a fellow veteran here in the States, they offered the sincere greeting they never got from the press, politicians, or, quite frankly, the public. Welcome home. It is a custom they still practice to this day. In this new series, DroneScapes offers Welcome Home, the stories of Vietnam veterans in their own words.
You ain't gonna believe this. Christmas of 1966, we had an operation going. We were at Benoit, okay, and if your geography is general, southeast of there is Vung Tau, and we had a road going up through Vung Tau, and we had an operation down there, and we put a battalion in to an outfit we called LZ Stump just before Christmas, and we had to get them out by Christmas because there was we declared a lull in fighting and we're supposed to come out of the field, and that was probably the hottest operation that we had that year. I flew with a guy named Dick Albrecht, and Dick had a little tape recorder, and he put the earphone under his helmet and plugged it into the microphone. And I have a tape that where we took those people in and brought them out under rather heavy fire during that operation, and you can hear all three channels working and the guns going and the rockets going out.
The zone was out in the middle of the boondocks, and it was quite steep to get into and out of, with trees about 150 feet on each side.
Still be bad news.
The smoke from the artillery and the airstrikes was all over it, almost IFR, so to speak.
Roger, have they stopped the artillery fire yet? I've seen negative red and haven't been advised of it being stopped. Oh, they're still firing. I see it now.
The whining sound is one of the weapon systems that you hear coming through into the tape recorder. It's a 40 millimeter system there. We're waiting now for the artillery and air, for the artillery to start firing on the landing zone so that the slicks can come in. the slicks being the ships that bring in the troops. This morning the artillery lasted 2.5 minutes longer than it was supposed to, and then the gunships that my platoon were supposed to come in for a 4-minute preparation. And you'll hear as the record goes on that the artillery lasted 2.5 minutes into our preparation, and we didn't quite get everything done. Although
Okay, being on the bark this morning, we're going to do it the same way we did yesterday. I'll tell you to get it ready, pull the pins, and let the handle flip, and then throw it.
the mark is the smoke grenades that we throw out that we drop into the landing zone while the ships with the troops on them are still a minute or two out, so they can see just exactly where to sit down inside the smoke. When we hit the right zone, it's a real good thing, but when we hit the wrong zone, we kind of mess them up.
It's still going at the left.
Going to 8-0 means when they take off with their troops on board, they fly slower.
Be advised, artillery's in it, and you got smoke all over the zone.
So I say they climb out slower after they pick the troops up, and then when they get to altitude and everybody gets in formation, they take off, and he says going to 8-0 means the speed, 80 knots. You can hear the rotor blades in the distance background here. You'll have to excuse a little bit of the language.
Go on in, 8-8, hit it, I'll follow you. Roger. We'll be braking right. Roger, I'll brake.
Some of the transmissions you'll hear very faint in the distance. You won't be able to make them out. We haven't gotten our technique down to taping all this stuff just right.
We're about 3 minutes out. Yeah, we're going to prepare one pass. The second pass will be the marking pass. Okay, thanks.
That sound you just heard was the one and only rocket that came out of my tubes then. We had some difficulty. And that choo-choo sound is the 40 millimeter kicking off. And the machine gun's coming in now.
Check my circuit breakers. I don't have any rockets. 8-8, this 8-6, I'm cutting in front of you. Come on around and cover me for the mark. Roger. 8-7, you follow 8-8 in. Roger. Cowboy lean, I'm about 45 seconds from mark. Do you have the red smoke in sight? Roger. Dallas, you have 45 seconds. We're on final now. 8-7, take your fire team and cover the flight. Get the smoke ready, get the smoke ready. Okay, drop the smoke, drop the smoke. So I can break off. Come on, H, you got 120-foot ditch crank right in the middle of it. cover him going out. Jump 4, 8-6 on the right side, 8-7. Rules of engagement only. This is lead. Say again about receiving fire. We couldn't reach it. Jump 3 and 2 receive fire from the left and the right of the LV. About 100 meters out. Roger, 100 meters out. 8-7, you have this flight at this time. We're going to stay over the zone. Roger. Got him on the right, 8-7.
This getting them on the right and getting them on the left means that he has a fire team, which is 2 ships, and one of them covers the right side of the formation, the other one covers the left side of the formation. So you'll hear people telling each other whose side they have. And the break is when you go in and hit something, which way you turn is a break.
And I'll be at altitude over you. Please, 5-7. Well, if ever there's been one smoke screen, that was it.
This 1 and 2 flights, the zone was quite small, and we were taking 10 ships in, so you had to take 5 in at a time. So we had 2 different elements going into the zone. And like I say, the wind wasn't blowing too awfully much, so all the artillery and the airstrikes that had come in there had left that place so smoky that it was very hard to see. And what we haven't heard was...
Get a hold of somebody, if they've lost a tail bomb, you have to get a hold of somebody to swing loader down.
The talk that you hear right there was that the number 5 ship in the first flight that went in hit a tree. As he was getting into the zone, all got out of it, and he kept it upright, but they had to replace the tail rotor and a tail rotor gearbox. They flew it out about 3 hours later while things were still going on.
Wait a minute. Be sure you know where that other gun is. Bring it around hard, man. Get me lined up on it.
The second flight was just taken off out of the zone, and they got fire also from the ground, and that's what you hear, line me up on it. The weapon systems have a certain degree of flexibility right and left and up and down, and you got to turn the ship in so that he can line guns up on them. We're usually doing circles about them. While they're going into the zone, they're slowing up, we're doing circles around them to try to cover them. In case they receive fire, they throw white smoke, and then we hit the area in which the white smoke has fallen into. And we've also got after the lifts start going, you get more people into the landing zone, which is the Lima Zulu. You have to watch out for the friendlies on the ground. That's why you hear...
Yeah, I know we're going to do that. I don't want to wait till the second flight comes in, though. They got 6 going. I want to see what they got. You still got some 40 to cover them. Right. They come in that second time, then we'll head out with one of the fire teams.
The limited fuel on these ships.
Yeah.
We try to keep a lot of fuel on board for emergencies, and while the flight's going on, we try to get refueled between the time they get at the pickup zone, which is the PZ, and the landing zone, which is the LZ. And we try to keep gun cover on them all the time. In fact, it's mandatory.
7, this is 8-6. When you come out after the next drop-off, you'll head for Lark, immediately refuel and rearm. 8-1, you'll refuel, rearm after 8-7 when he'll call you when he's off. Roger. That'll necessitate orbiting over this area here. Well, Ben, what's wrong with my rockets? I got 1 rocket out. I don't have another rocket. We got all them connections on, fine. Yes, sir. Well, something's wrong with us. Don't leave it fires in your fire.
Rules of engagement means that you must be fired at and identify the man firing at you or the area firing at you by flashes or by seeing a person before you can fire back.
Well, I hope it didn't hurt them boys down there. Don't guess it did.
That's speaking of the ship that knocked the tail rotor off, and no one was hurt.
Went through that mighty quick. gunfire received by a Bravo flight going out of the Lima Zulu, approximately 1 to 200 meters west of the LZ. Current situation, we have one is down in the Lima Zulu with tail rotor problems. We have a maintenance ship there. Over.
So that's what we call a CA, a combat assault mission, and like I say, it was an interesting one of the more interesting ones we've had in some time, and actually it's quite good to get in on because we haven't had a great deal of contact since I've been here, and you get complacent, you know. You get complacent in your when you're flying the lift ships and everything, and you also get complacent when we're flying these gunships covering these people. And we tend sometimes maybe to, not get in the best of positions by sloughing off and, not being alert all the time. It takes one of these good things to keep us in proper perspective over here.
Born in Cowan, Tennessee, 15 October 36. Local school, Sewanee Military Academy, high school in Sewanee, Tennessee. Georgia Tech, 1958. We have there's two sons. Both of us are military. My brother went Naval Academy, and I came here, and he retired Air Force, and I retired Army. I kind of thought I wanted to be an engineer, and at that time, I believed that Georgia Tech was the best opportunity close by. And when I got to Tech, it was obvious it was going to be a hard run. And I found out that I could go to ROTC, which was mandatory at that time at Tech for the first 2 years if you were physically able for it. So I figured those hours in military, in ROTC, would be A's, and I'd need them. And then when I got through the first 2 years, I still enjoyed it and continued it. Well, ROTC, you have a summer between junior and senior year, 6 weeks, and then if you finish the thing, you become a second lieutenant, and you have an obligation. At that time was 58. The obligation was 2 years. And if you took a regular Army commission, it was 3 years. So I had that obligation right out of school. When I was finishing my junior year at Georgia Tech, our instructor said, we're going to have a flight program, ROTC flight program, next year, which would have been my senior year, or was. And I volunteered for it. That summer I took the physical, I got it. And so during my senior year out here at Charlie Brown in Atlanta, I got 40 hours of ground school and 40 hours in a J3 Cub and got my license to fly, the obligation for which I was obligated to ask for flight school when I went in the Army. And I did. And I went through basic airborne ranger and went straight to flight school.
Here the fledgling pilot will learn how a helicopter actually works in the new TH-55 trainer. It's a standard commercial model, unmodified or off the shelf. Basically, all copter controls are the same. Move this gizmo up to go up, down to go down. The stick in your right hand controls movement to the sides, forward or backward. The pedals are for keeping the copter headed where you want it headed.
From there, out of flight school, now I flew that Hiller we were talking about, basic, and then I flew the Paisaki H-21, tandem rotor job that looks like a flying banana, old machine. We went to Korea, where my unit only had the bell like you see in MASH, and a Sikorsky early model called the H-19. So I spent a year there, and while there, one of the officers in 60 was going home, and I asked him what he was going to do, and he told me he was going to Fort Bragg to a special forces thing, and then to Vietnam. And I said, where's that? So you want to know what's going on? That's when I first really became conscious that we had a little thing going in Vietnam. I was down at Fort Rucker after Korea, and they came by looking for a few people to go to Vietnam to instruct the Vietnamese in flying the Sikorsky H-34. And I wasn't qualified in it, so I didn't get to go. And so I had some time in a unit down there that basically armed our own helicopters. Then I had a year and a half in France and a year in Germany. And while I was over in Germany, I again asked to go to Vietnam. So when I finished that German thing in December of '63, I came home for 2 weeks leave and reported in Vietnam in about the 20th of January of 1964.
And you requested it because you were a career guy and that's where the war was, or what made you want to go to Vietnam?
Well, if you're trained to do something and you're paid to be able to do it, it's a shame to hide from it. So that seemed like the thing to do. Out on the West Coast, they had a DC-6 Overseas National Airways, a little bitty a side thing. I had my helmet bag, and in that helmet bag, I had a .357, a 5-shot air weight 38, and my air weight 45, and some ammunition. I didn't know how I was going to get there or what I was going to find. And when I walked up the steps, the stewardess was there, and I told her what I had in my bag, and she said, "Put it under your seat. We don't want it to fall out and hurt someone." I got to Vietnam. They told me where I was going, and I flew in, and here you are, and we'll be checking you out. And there was the UH-1Bs that I was well qualified in. What did I find there? At that time, in 1968, we had about 5 or 6 aviation companies, I think. And we had 2 of them north of Saigon, one at Quy Nhon and one at Pleiku. And we supported the Vietnamese. And we took them out on operations. We had people who were advisors out there with them. We resupplied them. Actually, we medevaced them at that time. The medevac wasn't well established. And we took people out to the villages, medical people, psychological warfare people, whatever we were told to do, that's how we got them out there.
Do you remember your first mission?
Not really. In 1964, I never had a really hot mission in 1964 because we just didn't have any big battles in '64. I've got notes for the first 7 months on what we did every day, a little bitty paragraph. And you flew, if you were doing administrative stuff, you went up above 1,500 feet, which probably would give you the best chance of not being hit by small arms. And sometimes we flew one pilot missions then. As far as medevac goes in '64, when we went, first off, you got to know that in the UH-1s we had 3 basic radios. You had a UHF, and that was kind of Air Force, and a VHF, which was kind of Army, and then FM, which is what people on the ground would communicate with you. And in '64, when we flew from one point to the other, we set our FM radios on 37.0, and everyone who was on the ground as a Special Forces, and I hadn't mentioned Special Forces, but there were a lot of Special Forces camps that we supplied in '64 and helped do whatever they wanted us to do. And so they knew that we were on 37.0 if they saw a UH-1 coming over, and the advisors on the ground knew that also. So you may be flying and you hear somebody call in and say, helicopter in the vicinity of Chiorillo flying southeast, this is so-and-so. And you'd answer them, and it might be a Special Forces camp who wanted someone to go to their major headquarters in the Drang, which was where you were angling, and they'd ask you if you had room for one, come down, or they'd call in and say if they had a medevac that needed to go to a certain place. In a case like that, then what we did was circle over, and they'd say we're going to pop smoke, and if they throw out a grenade, then we would identify the color to keep the bad guys on the frequency from throwing a smoke that might be a different color. So those were just some of the jobs that we did, and whatever they wanted. I was assigned to an aviation company called the Cowboys. At that time it was A Company of the 82nd, but they renamed it, and we were attached to the 173rd Airborne in Benoit, and our operational area was 3 Corps. It is the northern part of South Vietnam, down to probably Quang Ngai, and then from Quang Ngai on down to below Ban Me Tuot was 2 Corps, and that included over at Nha Trang and Phan Thiet, I think. And then 3 Corps went on down to about the river, down at maybe, it was north of My Tho, Vinh Long, probably there. And then the south of Vinh Long down, the rest of it is 4 Corps down there. In that tour, we supported the 173rd, and we did whatever they wanted us to do, the combat assaults, taking them in, pulling them out, resupplying. We also had missions for long-range patrols that were down in the area where we took people in, and some of the guys sometimes had to get them out in a hurry by throwing out ropes down through the trees and pulling them up. I never was on that, because in an aviation company in Vietnam, you had 3 platoons, 8 helicopters per platoon, and 2 of them were what we called slicks. They had a machine gun on each side, but they took troops and supplies. And then there was a platoon of 8 helicopters that were armed helicopters.
We had several lifts today, about 16 lifts, and we divided the flight into Alpha and Bravo flights, so you'll hear us trying to cover 2 flights going into one landing zone that's kind of hard to get in and out of. We got to go in and pick them up in a tangle of brush and bring them out of the place out through the trees. Again, 2-5 is a control ship, and you hear them. The numbers 8-1, 8-3, 8-4, 8-7, 8-6, and 8-8. They're the gunships from my platoon.
Do you call that a left orbit?
And the orbit is the way we fly around the slicks once they get to the ground.
Go ahead. Go ahead. All of it left. All of it left. Hit the
smoke. Again, when the slicks get fired at, they throw smoke and we shoot at the smoke. So that's what that was about there.
Chalk 8 and 9 received fire short of the LZ smoke rocks on the spot. Roger, we got it. We'll hit it again on the way around. Roger, watch friendlies.
And the choo-choo chunk noise would be the 40 millimeter. And the noise that goes choo, choo, that'll be the rockets moving out on the machine. And of course you can hear the machine gun.
Chalk 4 of my Bravo element accurately located the LZ itself was firing at us. Roger, would you give me the 6-digit coordinate of that? He saw which way they went out. 50 meters on that run. That ought to get it. 50 meters? No, he said right on the trees. Inside the LZ. Go ahead, Lee. The South you have a new map of the coordinates, and I'm going to give him for that automatic weapon. Roger, we have approximately 4 or 5 minutes of fuel remaining before we have to refuel. I'd like to recommend that we place our time in where we will always have an aircraft up here, over. 906, that's affirmative. Now, how long before you got to go down, over? Roger, we have 4 or 5 minutes, 45 minutes, over. This is 906. Wait on you. You're ready on ours. It would be about 4596. We're on now. This is 96. We have 4 or 5 also, so we'll break at this time and refuel while you're controlling this air and artillery, and we'll be back on station. Over. 2-5, roger out. Not 2-5, Cowboy 6, we're about 2 minutes out. This is 2-5, roger, be advised there's one more pass, stand by. This is 2-5, roger, you're cleared to come in, the man is on his final pass. Roger. 6-5, you're cleared. Roger. Hey, Falcon, the first flight is about a minute and a half out. That's 86, roger. 87, this is 86, you gotta be a little in front of us, buddy, so you can fire from north to south under them going in from west to east. Okay, just a little far out there, Falcon. Bring it in, 88, 81, going in. Okay, 87, anytime you can get to it. 81, roger, I'm going in now. Okay. Cowboy lead, we're commencing a run at this time. Roger. 87, this is 88, we got a altitude now, let's DD on up to the north so we can swing into the south under Scott Falcon, real good. Roger, you lead. 9625, UHF. 96 go. Roger, be advised, we haven't returned to recommend that the lift continue as progressing. Unless we're receiving severe ground fire again, we have fighters on air camp at this time, and if the situation should arrive, is hold the flight and use the air. Over. This is 906. That's affirmative. Unless we get something real big, we're not going to have another long delay like we had before. 81, this is 86. Go ahead. How much fuel do you have on board? As you were. Armament. Roger. Roger, I got about 50% on the rockets and 40% on the 40 millimeter. Roger. Roger, can you keep that up if you only use machine guns and occasional rocket, occasional 40 millimeter? This is 86. We'll manage to keep at least 3 on station at all times. 9625, UHF. Roger, that was a fine job that time. Charlie, this is Roger, the second half of line item 187, what's your armament status? Roger, y'all head back at this time and refuel and see if you can get that stuff fixed.
They had, at that time, we had no miniguns at that time. We had 2 machine guns on each side and rocket pods of various sizes, and sometimes we have a 40 millimeter gun sitting out on the front of it.
How would you explain to someone who doesn't understand the terrain and all the things you were dealing with over there, how would you explain to them why the helicopter was, I mean, to this day, the sound of a Huey blade is almost the audio brand of Vietnam. How do you explain to people why those helicopters were so important?
I think all you have to do is look at the statistics, medical statistics of the wars and conflicts before the helicopter and look at them after the helicopter. That, from the viewpoint, I believe, of the ground pounders, the actual combat people out there on the ground. They know that what they need is generally going to come or go by way of a helicopter. There were more exciting times. You kind of got anytime you support Americans, as opposed to supporting another country, regardless of what it is, I think we as Americans feel that we are doing more good, and therefore you could say that was more interesting. I flew guns that whole time, and what we were doing was call out to give support to the troops that needed it. We also flew around at nighttime to try to do a little bit of discovery and interdiction for the things that were moving at night. And you had more Americans there that you were a part of. So it was more interesting, yeah.
Is there any particular mission or missions in those first 2 tours that stick with you above all else, or a day you'll never forget sort of thing?
I came out of that place for my last tour in June of '70, and up until that time we had no shoulder-fired weapons directed at us. Later, they had some of those. So that was not in our worry system at the time. The 50 calibers would be the most important thing and that you're worried about. But I saw very few of those. You can say I spent a lot of time over there, but I really can't sit here and tell you that my time over there was when the worst part was going on. I didn't schedule it, but that's what happened. Now, you've got to understand that when these people who were flying, the gunners and the crew chiefs, were guys who were 18, 19, 20 years old. A lot of them were. And the perspective of a person who had been there or a person who's longer age-wise is different from an 18-year-old who may have never even shot a shotgun when they hear a bullet or two go by. So you're talking to an older guy who'd been there a lot, and somebody who'd been there at the same time with me on those things, who was young, would probably have a different view than I do of how bad it was.
And when did your second tour come to an end?
Well, the Army put out a program for all services. If you extend your tour by 6 months, that they would let you go anywhere you wanted to and pay you a round-trip ticket and give you 30 days that was not chargeable till you leave. So my brother was over there, and he called me up and said, let's do that. And so we extended, and consequently then when I came back from that extension, which was March or April, then I had a new job, and I actually was supposed to stay through the end of '67, but I got medevaced out a little early. And so that was my plus on the tour.
So what happened to you that required you to have to be medevaced?
That hiller I was telling you about, you sit about like this and you fly stick like this, and I took a AK round up through the bottom, right through the controls. Most of it went in the stick and the rest of it went in my hand. And so I got a little free medical attention. I came back to the States and had a little few months there to hang around. Then I went back out to Walters, Texas, and instructed for about a year. And I got back into Vietnam again in June of 1969 and stayed there till the last day of February of '70.
Am I right to assume that you volunteered to go back? You didn't have to go back, or how?
Yeah, but that was a little bit of arguing with management. I've been wanting to get fixed wing rated. I never had been rated in Army fixed wing, and so I called them up and was trying to say I'd like to go to fixed wing school. And the guy who was my assignment man said, the only people getting fixed wing are those we're sending back to Vietnam. And I said, what class number am I going to be in? And he said, no. I said, yep. And he said, okay. And so they gave me fixed wing school, and I went back. So it was a bargain. Cubs and the L-19. Now, I don't know about you and you're a Cub, but if you get in the L-19, that's a powerful and dependable machine, and there's a lot of difference there.
But you went back for your third tour, you went back as a helicopter pilot.
Went right back. Well, I had a staff job in aviation safety for about 5 months. It was the worst part of my Vietnam tour, was sitting at a desk. And then in November, I got a command of a company, and it turned out to be the same company I'd been in '66. We were back then supporting Vietnamese down in the Delta, and 3 Corps. And the real high point of it was the people in the company. It was strange in that you got 52 flight positions, officers and warrants, mostly warrants. And in that company at that time in 1959, I was the only aviator who had previously flown in Vietnam. And when I saw that, you know, I had wonderment. But it was obvious pretty early on that these are great people. Well, I came out and got married, and I went to Florida State University, and I was there for 3 years and 2 sons. And then I went to Leavenworth for Command General Staff, and I came back here to Atlanta and worked in the Recruiting Command, Southeast Region Recruiting Command. And following that, I went over to Forces Command Headquarters, which was here in Atlanta, and worked in personnel in recruiting and retention until I retired in 1982. 24 years and a month. My brother was Air Force, okay? You gotta understand that before 1959, 59 was the first year that the Air Force Academy graduated a class. And before that, about a quarter of the military academy and naval academy could go Air Force. And so he went Air Force. He was over there in Vietnam as about a little over 4 years between Thailand and the thing. When we were there together in '66, he was the forward air controller, air liaison officer, flying L-19s for an outfit called Sigma, which was 3 Corps long-range patrols. And he spent a great amount of time as a forward air controller and air liaison officer. Matter of fact, if you want to interview somebody who is as good as you'll find,
That's your brother. That's a very dangerous job that they did. And he did that for all that time he was there?
I think he did that probably for 2.5 years. He started off by teaching pilot training in northern Thailand in a T-28. He flew F-100s sometimes over there. He flew F-4s a little bit. But as far as his FAC-ALO, I'd say he had at least 2 years worth of it. Ed was flying one time, he said, and they were in 3 Corps, and he had a patrol that was nip and tuck, trying to find a place to pick them up. And he said he was burning fumes, and he told him he just had to leave, and so he headed down to Lai, I think it was. I believe it was the 1st Infantry Division down there, and he knew there was some L-19s. He said he called and got straight in, and he saw those L-19s, and it was a sergeant working on one. He said he wheeled this in and pulled it up and yelled at that sergeant and said, "Is it flyable, and does the radio work?" And he said, "Yes, sir." He jumped in that thing with his maps and everything, called the tower, emergency takeoff, back out over the troop. Said when he came in and landed, the tower said, "Sir, the post commander would like to talk to you." And so he said, fill out the books and everything, and they took him over to the post commander, and he reported in, and the colonel said, "Major, you want to tell me about it?" He said, "This is what's happened." And the colonel said, "How did it fly? Did you fill out the book? Come back to see us." So that's good. Army, Air Force, get together.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it
You know, we don't actually know all of the background of the decisions that were being made, but from our lowly position, it would seem that the political decisions didn't allow the military to do what we could have done as far as it goes. But then again, I look back now and I say our presence over there in the South and to some part elsewise is the country of Vietnam is, in my view, leaving the communist 100% shell, and our presence and our effort probably is going to have won those peoples to our way of life. You know, we lost a lot of people over there, but my God, look at some of the cities we got here and how many we're killing every weekend or every year and everything like that. And I think if I'd been lost over there, it'd be a hell of a lot better than being killed down in Atlanta. Some people say that they were treated poorly when it came back. Never did I have anything. No one ever, maybe it's where I'm from. Maybe it's where I was assigned. But I was never spat upon or talked about or put down. And I don't know. Different people carry a load differently. Some people carry it with a bone structure, and some people carry it with their muscles. And them that carry it with their muscles are going to be hurting pretty soon. So where'd you come from? I think there's a lot to be said for who are you? It's true. If you were weak when you went, you got a better chance of being fouled up when you come back. Back in 1964, the 3rd day of July, I was in Pleiku, was a operations officer of the 119th Aviation Company. It was a part of the 52nd Infantry, 52nd Battalion, and it was out of Pleiku, Holloway. It was an Air Force base up there, and in 64, Holloway was an old French base. And we got a call 11 o'clock at night or so, and there was a special forces camp west of Khartoum, and I can't pull the name up, but it was being run over. And it was sucked in weather. And our battalion instructor pilot instruments was Ed Missildine. So the battalion commander called up and he said, we need to get somebody up over the thing to contact them on FM. Air Force could fly up there, but they didn't have FM. So Ed Missildine and I took a UH-1, and there was a radar. I think it was Parrot control, but I wouldn't swear to it. And we took off, and they directed us out over the camp. And just as we got over the camp, we came into a sucker hole that we could see the ground. And it had to be 2 miles across. So we flew over the camp, and we could see some fire going on. And we tried every frequency we could, and we stayed up there until we needed fuel, and then went on back over. They took us back over to a place where we could get fuel at Khartoum, and we didn't get back out there until the next morning when it got a little light and we could go in. We couldn't land because we had no contact with them whatsoever. And when we landed out there that morning, I guess that was the first time I ever seen people laying on the ground. And the interesting thing about it was, when you have a special forces camp, you've got a team out there, and then they're normally surrounded by Nungs, which was a local tribal, and then there's some Vietnamese in the camp and everything. And the first we were told that the first mortar that came in hit the A-frame right down top of where their team was. And one man was wounded, and they moved him down to the river and put him on a floating barrel, and the other guy stayed out there with him away from the camp. There were no other Americans hit or wounded, but the camp was in a mess. That was 3rd day of July going on to the 4th of July, 1964. But that was one of the hot American things that we had. A interesting flight that I had was flying a day or two before Thanksgiving, flying gun cover on a C-47 that was going around parachuting frozen turkeys to the Special Forces camps. But different things. Those were we did have and I've got a film of us, a place called Habon, Chirrio. They had a camp down near there, and they had a flood. And we took the company down there, the 119th, and picked up Vietnamese and brought them out of the flood. But again, that was 64. And you got to understand, I'm an aviator.
Right.
Okay? I wasn't down there under the trees. I was not down there in the rice paddies. So, right up front, when you're talking to somebody, you ought to find out what they did, because that colors how we feel.
How many missions did you fly in those 3.5 tours? Don't know.
Be very sure when you speak of missions that your Army helicopter missions aren't the same as Air Force and Navy missions. I might go out today on 3 different missions, flying 2 or 3 hours on each one, okay, in the Army. Well, those boys in the Navy and the Air Force, generally speaking, if they go out on one and they're doing a lot of refueling and all this and everything, hell, they're flown all day. So Army missions in helicopters can be 30 minutes, 2 hours, or we can go out on one fly for 12 or 13 hours for the day on the thing. But I say that because we just aren't, as a general rule, comparable by mission time.
I understand.
By the time of a mission. There's a young guy named Dominic Fino who, along with 4 or 5 other guys, enlisted in the unit in 69 and 70, have put together a list of several hundred people who have been in that unit. And about every 2 years, of late it's been in Las Vegas because the Golden Nugget puts up with us. And we'll have anywhere from 30 to 60 people plus family get together out there about every 2 years. And the nice thing about it is to be able to see the people and to hear what some of the people have done. And that's a case where you can go in 2 years later and almost take up the conversation where it stopped 2 or 4 years previous to that. I think the military, if you're in the military in a circumstance where you not only work with someone but you live with them, that after any number of months, a year or something like that. It's amazing the camaraderie that you have in the service. You know, when I went to flight school, I was in the first class of combat arms to go straight to helicopters. Prior to our class, there were about 22 of us, I think, who graduated. In January, we went in January of '59. Everybody had gone fixed wing, and then they took a Q course, a quick course in helicopters. And along with Medical Service Corps people. Now, Medical Service Corps people had been going in to helicopters prior to that without being fixed wing rated. But our class, 59, and they called it C4, so I guess that was Combat 4. We went, because when I was assigned to Korea and got to Korea, they had changed a number code for what kind of aviators you requested. And I got over there and they were going to assign me to a unit that had 3 L-19s and a Beaver. And I said, man, I'm not even fixed wing rated. And the guy looked down and he hadn't put his changes in his orders. So I was kind of fortunate to get into that early. Part of the success of the military in this country is due to the fact that when a leader is incapacitated, there's always someone else who will take over. And we're brought up over here not to be led around by a ring in our nose, but to take charge. So that's a part of being an American.